Hey, Neil McDonald here. We're going to get started. I apologize. I didn't put that little streamer going across. I don't know why I didn't do that. But I want to welcome you into the LinkedIn Live. Good morning to those who are on the West Coast and out in the middle of the Pacific, on Guam, Hawaii, Alaska, all sorts of places out there. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast like me. I am just checking my tech really quick to make sure we're good to go. I think we are. I got a lot of stuff I want to try to share today in a quick minute, and so I'm going to be moving pretty fast. And if you haven't been here before, it's a fire hose way of training, but I do try to put nuggets in there that you can take away as actionable items. And today, related to federal sales relationship building or relationships done right, I'm going to do that exact same thing. Try to give you really good nuggets at the end that you can follow. For those of you who don't know me, I am Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my daily federal sales training where I teach process and procedures for you to achieve success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, been in every role with every hat on my head, and my favorite being sales. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that success in the federal market and government contracting are not a secret. They're just a process. And when we follow a process A to Z, we're going to achieve the success that we're looking for. And most times, and today in particular, it's relationships, right? Because today we're going to be talking about building relationships that work for us in the federal market with federal buyers, teammates, etc. Before we get started, can you do me a favor and help me and buyers remember who you are by putting your core competency and your company name into the chat? 2 or 3 words is perfect. Actually, if you're able to nail it down to 1 word, that's our new thing that we're trying here on this community. Also, make sure you're telling people in the community whether you're open to connections, right? I'm going to be training you today, and so I'll look away from the chat for a second. But the chat is full of people just like you who are looking for possible teammates, friends who are trying to sell into the Air Force on maybe unrelated technology, but same customer base. Just great people in the community from the buyer side, from us seller sides, or I guess from you seller sides, and from those people like me who are just supportive of the industry serving the government. And so say hello in there, let people know that you're open to connections. I did want to answer a quick question because it came up, and frankly, it's much faster for me to say it here, but it's also helpful. Somebody asked this question that basically comes down to, should I work with a prime that wants me to do most of the work, right? They had a lot of text, but I boiled it down to that. And it really was important to me to answer this because if you're a small business, 1 person, 2 people in a company, and you're not making any money or really minimal money, what I say is for the first 3 million, for the first 3 years, whichever goes longer, you should be subcontracting. You should be under small businesses that are in that $5 or $10 million range generally, right? You should be subcontracting in there because it gets rid of all the friction between your first revenue and you, right? You're starting a business and you need to sell. If you try to do all this extra stuff, like write an entire proposal, try to prime, try to do all these things, try to charge the government and get them to pay on time, all those things, right? If you try to do all that in the beginning, it's overwhelming. But if you sit there and get a good couple of prime teammates and you go in under them, you should only expect to write some of the proposal. You should not expect to do the bulk of the writing. First off, that's called prime contract. And second, you're going to waste a lot of time going after something like that when you probably won't even win. Go find small businesses that would love to have you on their team. In fact, I'm going to share one of my customers from this morning, to what I'm telling you, but they're bringing in $5 million more a year. They're farther along, right? They're not in that early stage. But when you have the right relationships, it'll bring you forward. So those of you who are just getting in, you're looking to make your first 50K to first 500K, let's say. Do that with less administrative activity and more just being the subject matter expert on a team. Okay, so I hope that was helpful there and answered the question somebody else had. And I hope that it's helpful to others out there who are finding themselves when you're early on getting pulled into too much work that you're not ready for. So I do want to share, today's topic is on relationships, and I want to share where that fits in. So relationship building fits right into the middle of the 7-step process for federal revenue success. If you haven't seen it, this is how we communicate the federal revenue process, right? If you want to succeed in government contracting, relationships right here are the center, right? So for the past few days, I've been talking about visibility, targeting, and outreach. That's how you get into a new agency, or that's how you get into government contracting if you're just getting started. And the whole purpose of VTO, those first three process steps, is to help you develop relationships. When you develop relationships, it will lead to opportunities. Opportunities in your pipeline will enable you to be able to write proposals that are winning proposals. And when you write winning proposals, you're going to win. You're going to earn sales. You're going to, win sales here. And the cool thing about this is, and I know it seems magical, is that when you win sales, you're going to develop more relationships. Now you're inside the customer wire. You're able to meet the core and other people in the program office. You'll be able to develop more relationships, which will help you identify more opportunities, which allow you to write more proposals, win more sales. You get it, right? So it all begins in this circular process for predictable and repeatable revenue. It begins with relationships, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so I wanted to share with you just this fantastic story, but it's also so perfect for today's topic. It just came to me this morning, and it actually happened to my customer yesterday. My customer Tim and I were talking this morning, and by the way, if you don't know this, I do a workshop, but I also do very minimal one-on-one, like very minimal customers. We're not trying to build a business model around that. And so this story I'm giving you is with a more mature small business. They're actually getting ready to graduate to large at some point. But anyways, long story short, I've been teaching this whole idea of relationships with them, and that relationships need to be part of your 5-year strategic plan. When you look at a 5-year strategy, and actually Gus can drop into the chat maybe, we have a training specifically on how do you create a 5-year strategy with one page, using just one page. But on it, it's a wheel. And in the wheel, part of the strategy for 5 years of revenue growth is to have 8 strategic partners. You can learn more about what a strategic partner is, but a strategic partner is one that basically is doing what just happened with Tim. He has had a relationship with this large prime, and they've done some subcontracting work with them. And we talked with them about develop that relationship more purposefully, not opportunity driven, but growth driven. Get in there and talk to them about how you can help them grow, maybe get access to small business opportunities, how they can help you grow by perhaps putting you on their team. So long story short, and I'm going to come back and tell a whole day about this with Tim, probably because he's willing to share a lot of the story of how it happened, because he wants to help industry as well. But long and the short of it is, Tim's company has had a basic working relationship with this large prime, a body here kind of thing. And they were in a meeting talking about another opportunity related to the opportunities they had. And one of the things that came up was DODAF, for example. It's something to do with enterprise architecture, et cetera. But Tim's company has, and he's the head of federal sales in this company. They have expertise in this, but this large prime did not. And so they said, you know what? We got people on the other side of our company who are doing something in that space. Long story short, within just a few short months, minimal time commitment, they were able to get over there, demonstrate their value to being on the team, got on the team. Their work share is to the point where it's $5 million a year minimum going forward. It has more potential, but minimal. So in a short amount of time, through their relationship, and one other thing, through their core competency, very focused core competency, which means they have focused or related past performance, by doing that and having that relationship, they were able to turn that into additional work through this large prime. It's what I want you to know, is that this same thing can happen to you. If you're brand new in the government space and you're trying to get your first few dollars, you do that with a company that's like $2 to $10 million. And you're not looking for $5 million a year. You're looking like for $100,000 or $200,000 a year. You do it balanced, but you do it with an expectation of growth. When you have relationships, and they're the strategic ones that'll work, you will grow your company the way you want. And this is why I try pretty hard in the 5-year strategy to make sure strategic teaming partners are part of your plan. So, hey, if you're like me and you think it's awesome that Tim was able to win this $30+ million piece of work through relationships, his relationships that he's managed and his colleagues have managed, then go ahead and put in the chat, congrats, Tim, so that he sees that, because he's actually in our community as well. In fact, I've introduced some of you to him, so you might even know who I'm talking about. So let's get in and talk about role play. When you think about relationships, I want you to think about them from a role-based perspective. A role-based perspective, what I mean is, and I got this from Neil Rackman in a book called Major Account Sales Strategies that I think he might have wrote in the 80s. I read it in the 90s. I've been doing sales a long time, and I really latched onto it. So I got this from him. But the idea of role-based is that everybody you interact with falls into one of three roles. They're either a focus of receptivity, a focus of dissatisfaction, or a focus of power. And so let's talk about that for a second. Focuses of receptivity, these are people who are friendly and willing to help you learn about an agency or about their company, and they're willing to make introductions, right? It's the opposite of a gatekeeper. Right. And so focuses of receptivity, they don't have any power and they don't have any need, but they do have the willingness to help their company or agency learn about you if you're a good fit. That's why when you think about small business specialists, their job is kind of part focus of receptivity and part gatekeeper. They can't send the thousands of small businesses that are constantly calling the Air Force straight to the program office. Otherwise, the program office would never do their mission. But when they see that you're procurement ready, you've got strong core competencies that align to their needs, then there'll be a focus of receptivity helping you meet others. Focuses of dissatisfaction are the people who have the goals that aren't being met or the challenges they're facing and they don't know how to overcome. These people typically are program office representatives within a organization. They can also be the program office's customers. So if you look at a lot of federal agency customers, often they'll talk about who do they serve. An example might be at the FBI. If you're looking at the IT department and the IT department's got these enterprise tools, applications, et cetera, who's using those tools? It's the agents in the field doing the mission of the FBI. And so you have these different levels of focus of dissatisfaction. They all might have different concerns. When I'm doing capture and I'm trying to learn about people's objectives, what do the agents want the tools to do better, et cetera. When I'm doing capture or when I'm doing business development, trying to learn more, these focuses of dissatisfaction will tell me about objectives, what they want, and pain points, what they're running into that they wish were gone. The last one is focus of power. In the government contracting space, this is the contracting officer. It's also the contract specialist. I know that the contracting officer is the one who signs it, but contracting specialists working with that final signature, their focus is of power, right? So that group, the acquisition people in the government space, they're the focuses of power. By the way, not some CIO, not some Secretary of the Army. Those aren't focuses of power. The acquisition people are the focuses of power because they're the only ones who can give you money. In the industry side for a prime contractor, if you go to them, focuses of receptivity, I hope that makes sense still. Focuses of dissatisfaction for you might be a program manager. So yesterday I used an example about Booz Allen winning a $190 million contract. Well, if they have a $190 million contract, there's a program manager whose job is has profit and loss responsibility. Make sure we get the most out of this contract that we can and make sure we do a great job. Well, that program manager could be a focus of dissatisfaction because maybe they need a company just like yours to help them shore up either a weakness on capability or a weakness on I just can't find the right people. Another focus of dissatisfaction on the industry side are the business developers and capture people. They're trying to build relationships within the agency, learn about opportunities, develop opportunities going forward. You could be working with them because they have objectives and pain points as well. Focuses of power on the industry side kind of go up and down. You can watch a whole nother video. I talk about that. I am 2 weeks from now probably going to do 5 days of training in a row about larges and how to get in, how to navigate, and all that kind of stuff. So track on us there. All right, so that's role-based, right? I want you to keep that in mind. When you're trying to build relationships, think about the people you're meeting. What position are they in? What role are they serving in? The next thing I really want you to pay attention to on relationships is that sometimes they need water. So hold on one second. It's funny, if I take a sip of water, does it show weakness? No, I'm just human. Okay, when you think about relationships, I really want you to think win-win. Stephen Covey wrote a book called The 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. And I've been reading that one for decades, and it is an absolute must read for you I would recommend annually, but it's a must read. Fantastic book, is not outdated. But in there, he talks about these different ways of winning. You can have win-win, lose-lose, win-lose, or lose-win, right? And I want to talk about those because there's really only one that concerns me. The other ones we'll talk about. So win-win should make sense, right? They win and I win. That everybody's happy. So when we see that, we know we're doing pretty good. Lose-lose is obviously no one's happy, but it's pretty easy to see. You can look in there and go, well, that sucked. Nothing came out of that. Not for you, not for us. And sometimes lose-lose is not necessarily a bad thing because it could be that the lose-lose tells you that, this relationship, we shouldn't keep building it, right? It's just not a fit for you or for us, for either one of us. So let's just stop. So that's lose-lose. The next one is win-lose, where the buyer is unhappy, but you're happy. Obviously, that's bad, but it's clear. I think it should be pretty clear that you're going to be looking and saying, well, hey, we're getting what we want, but they're not getting what they want. And this could be, by the way, also with a teammate. I often see people get into teammate relationships and somebody tries to give work share at like 5% or 2%. I'm like, what the heck are you doing? Like if this company really is bringing something of value and worthwhile being on the team, do you really think anything under 5% is, unless you're talking about hundreds of millions, that's really putting them in a bad position. You're making them lose, but you can see this, this instinctively. The one that concerns me the most, and I want you to stop doing, if you're doing it, is lose-win. It's where you're unhappy, but the other person is doing good. It's the worst for your company because you're just giving away the farm, if you will, whether it's your time and investment. You had to research meetings, go into meetings, you're building these relationships, and somehow you think if I just give, right? And I'm going to come back to this because I know I say give, but there's times you give and there's times you don't. When you're building relationships should be two-sided. They should be win-win. It should never be lose-win or win-lose, right? And the key about this, and the reason we sometimes do this, is because we go in, and now I'm speaking just to small businesses, we go in and see ourselves as a small business going in, or we see ourselves subordinate to the other person we're meeting, whether we're meeting with a program office or one of these focuses of receptivity, dissatisfaction, or power, or we're meeting with a prime contractor. Even if it's somebody who's a small, sometimes we go in and think, well, they're making 10 million. They must be better than us. They're not. No one's better than you, and no one's better than me, right? We're all just equal, and we're all at different stages in our journey. But what you are is a subject matter expert. I want you going in with this whole idea when you're building relationships that you're a trusted advisor to these people you're trying to build a relationship with. And so you want to go in and make sure that you're getting something out of that meeting, that relationship, as well as you're giving. So I said givers, or give. There's a couple of phrases I use a lot, and so do people in the sales industry. One's called giver's gain, right? If you give, you gain. Another one might be give without expectation. I say that a lot as well. Give without expectation. And actually giving without expectation is not a bad thing because it's kind of like blank win. There's nothing on your side. You're not winning or losing. It's just blank and somebody else is winning. But when I talk about give, or giver's gain, or give without expectation, I typically mean in scenarios just like this. I am training you, incredibly valuable training here, every day, right? We're well over 100 episodes in a row of sales training, and I'm giving it without any expectation. I get this all the time. People say, well, how come you're not monetizing or something? I don't want to. This is not what I want to monetize. I want this to be sharing information because I really believe that the process has been kept secret. Government contracting is not a secret, but the process kind of has been. And so I really want to put it out. Well, I want you to do the same thing. If you're in cybersecurity, you could be putting out content that talks about that. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But this idea of giving without expectation, that tends to be more in marketing and social media type activity, not in meetings, not in relationship development. When you're developing relationships, make sure both your company and the other party, the government or a teammate, make sure both are winning. That's really important. So I hope this is driving forward on this idea of win-win. If you see what I'm saying, if you agree that Win-win is the way to go. Then put win-win in the chat. Win/win or anything you want. Give me a second to get water. And then I want to talk about knowing, liking, and trusting you. So there's this idea that nobody buys from you, or people only buy from those they know, like, and trust, right? And I did a whole video that you can go watch, and I think it is, I think it's titled "People Don't Buy from Those They Trust." And Gus, maybe you can put that in for me. But the whole point is, I mean, people don't buy from those they know. They have to trust you. And what I was trying to do is show you how you could build trust. But I want to talk about this for a minute, because relationship building is helping them know, like, and trust you. When you're building a relationship, you're helping that other person know, like, and trust you. People buy from those they know, like, and trust you. So you want to get to that stage. I want you to think about this. Don't put it in the chat, but just think about this. What are you doing right now to get them to know you? What are you doing right now to getting your relationships to trust you? And what are you doing right now to get them to like you? Personally, I think you don't have to do much to get them to like you. If they trust you, they will begin to like you, right? Trust has a level of like in there as well. But like is the least important to me. I need them to know me and trust me, and that's what I want you to do. So when you think about building relationships and you're trying to get them to know you and trust you, you want to think of it like a bank, right? I said people only buy from those they know, like, and trust. Well, a bank, you have to put money in. You have to deposit over and over again to build up a pool of money, a savings, right? And only then can you spend. You can't, if you don't have money in the bank, you can't withdraw. And relationships are kind of like that, right? Is that you need to be depositing into that relationship. When you get out on social media and you're sharing content related to what your subject matter expertise is, for example, I don't know if Rafa's in here, but she does elevators. And one of the things I said to her is like, why don't you go find the top 5 manufacturers of elevators and create a compare and contrast chart that you can put out on social media for your buyers to be able to see. And it helps them do the market research and learn. Well, now they get to know her because they see this great document that she's doing. And then through her interpretation of which ones of these elevator manufacturers are best or whatever, through that, they're beginning to trust her. And so I want you to think that same way. Content sharing is a great way to get people to know you. Also, LinkedIn engagement, all these other things that I talked about before. Trust examples come from when you're meeting with somebody, right? They begin to trust you through the content. But really, once you get in and meet with them, you move beyond a subject matter expert, which is what my elevator example was, to a trusted advisor. When you start having conversations with the people you're building a relationship with, whether it's a teammate where you're having where you're having good conversations about opportunities or about an agency and, hey, we could both go in this way. Well, you're becoming a trusted advisor to them because you're able to say, hey, I know this program office does this thing, and I heard about this thing. And they're seeing, and by the way, that's why they begin to like you, is they're trusting what you're saying and they're appreciating that you're sharing. Federal government buyers, same thing. When you get in and you start talking to them about SharePoint and why it's important to actually, triage your applications in the on-prem environment before you ever move them to the cloud, so you can save money, increase user adoption, whatever. By having those conversations, those are trusted advisor conversations. It's no different than if one of you called me and said, hey, I got this question about government contracting. When I start talking with you, I'm a trusted advisor. You trust me and I'm advising you. Okay, so if you understand that, and if you think that it's important for you to put deposits into the relationships before you withdraw, put deposits in the chat. And I want to go to the last tip here is how to get a follow-on meeting. So while you're doing that, and I get a sip of water, put deposits in the chat. So here's a tip for how to get follow-on meetings. The first thing is, and I learned this from Dale Carnegie. I didn't learn it from him in person because I think he was back in the 1920s or earlier. But he came out with this idea, and I think he actually got it from somebody else. Act as if. Act as if. This idea, when you're going into a meeting and you want to have follow-on meetings, act as if you already have a great relationship. Act as if you're already going to have multiple meetings, or act as if you have recurring meetings, and this is just our first one, even though it's not scheduled, right? I used to say in my last company, we're $1 billion company Revenues not yet recognized. I was acting as if we were a billion-dollar company. Now, I never hit that stage, but that was always in my head, right? And you could do the same thing here when you're meeting and developing relationships with people. Act as if you're already in a great relationship. When you are in the meeting, something else you can do very specifically is when you start the meeting following the call plan that I recommend you use, at the beginning of the meeting, you say the purpose of the meeting. Just want to clarify, John, this is what we're going to talk about, blah, blah, blah. What I like to say is, hey, I want to make sure I save 5 minutes at the end so we can schedule a follow-on meeting if that makes sense. I just told John we're going to schedule a follow-on meeting, but I softened the whole expectations by going, if it makes sense, right? It might not make sense, but of course it's going to make sense because I'm going to ask for it. But in the other person's mind, they're already thinking that this is the first of more than one meeting. And that's what I want you to get used to. That's a skill. You just have to learn how to say that. And if you practice it, you will get really good at it. And it is not a bad thing because John will appreciate the fact that you're already thinking ahead of how you two could work together, either in industry or if they're the buyer, in additional conversations. So you want to be clear to John that this isn't a one-off call. I'm just calling to find out what are your store hours. That's a one-off thing compared to you want a long-term relationship. Okay, I wanted to end with this way of communicating how relationships are, and I'm trying to shape this. But what I was putting together is that relationships are like bread, right? And I want you to think farming, not hunting. In government contracting, we do not hunt. You do not get a hunting license. You get a farming license. That's a lot of work. Hunting, you sit, wait, shoot it. Not to diss the hunters. But anyways, relationships, though, are like bread. I need a relationship now to be able to chase business development opportunities or shape opportunities in my pipeline. I need that relationship. I need bread to eat because I'm hungry. But in order to eat bread, you need to make bread. In order to make bread, you must make flour. In order to make flour, you must reap wheat. In order to reap wheat, you must water and care for the crop. In order to care for the crop, you must plant seeds. In order to plant seeds, you need to create rows in the soil. In order to create rows in the soil, you need to till the land. But before you can till the land, you need to remove those big stones that are in there. And before you can remove stones, you have to have land. And in order to have land, you must have thought to buy the land. And all of that came after you determined there was going to be a need for a bread at some point and that you would want to eat bread. It's the same thing with relationships. You know you need the relationship to do business development, to do sales, right? And so you want to start now building those steps, walking through those steps so the relationships are there when you need them. And I don't just mean you know them and they're in your CRM, but you have built the relationship. You and I know each other so that you know it's totally okay for you to call and say, hey, can you introduce me to this person? Can you join my team? Can I get some information about your program, right? So all of that comes from farming activities. And so as you're working on this, just understand your efforts in building relationships should be more like farming than hunting. And when you do that, you're going to get a lot of good, strong relationships that will lead to success. So, okay, we're wrapped up here. We talked about relationship building. This was the end of 5 days. A couple of days ago, I did targeting, and you guys voted yesterday about targeting and large primes. Which one should I talk about for 5 days in a row first? And targeting won by a landslide. So next week, we're going to talk about targeting 5 different days in a row about targeting teammates and buyers. How do you actually get in there and get their names, numbers, and emails? That was the biggest question I get across the board. We're going to dive in to specifically do that. My intention is the week after that to be talking about how do you get into a large prime. So if you found this content valuable, give it a thumbs up. If you think others would find it valuable, please let them know. This community is your community. I've watched so many people in the last few months connect with each other. And actually the other day I introduced somebody and I said, hey, have you two met? And they said, yeah, like 3-4 times. I'm like, perfect. So I want you to keep doing that. I want you to know that we're really appreciative that you come in, that you engage in the chat. That makes it a community. And I want you to remember that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is having a great weekend. I hope you have a great weekend.